Well, when it is this hot outside, a few degrees can make a big difference. Meteorologist Paul Mireles shows us the criteria needed for a heat advisory or warning in today's Weather Minds.
South Texas has been experiencing a heat wave with many heat advisory days. A heat advisory is issued when the combination of hot temperatures and high humidity combine to create conditions in which heat illnesses are possible. A heat advisory is issued when the heat index is expected to reach 105 degrees or higher and the air temperature exceeds 103 degrees. In rare instances, an excessive heat warning may be issued when the heat index is expected to exceed 110 degrees or the air temperature is expected to exceed 105 degrees. In South Texas, when a heat advisory or warning is issued, take caution because excessive heat can be dangerous.